Mhm. See, that's not up there any longer, like it was a minute ago. So part of wellness is exercising grace and patience, says Megan Schaefer. Yeah.
Good morning.
Yes, come in.
We're good now. Let's see if we can get. let's see.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
So the camera.
So you have sound, camera, action. Let me get started here. So, good morning, everyone. Am I okay sitting? Everyone can see me at home, and everyone can see me here. I can see everyone. So I would call this sort of a passion project of mine. I enjoy having an opportunity to talk about wellness generally, and at different levels, from not just from a student perspective, but a staff perspective, a family perspective, a community perspective. So I think there's a lot of ways we can talk about wellness and health. And because I think we all kind of get a sense of like whether something's healthy or not, even if it's a system. Like you can say a system's healthy, a system's not healthy because of the way in which it's functioning for people or with people or against people. For me, this is a really important topic that I like to think from a systems perspective, we continue to evolve and do a better job of making that part of our lens and through which we operate. We have spent time talking about equity, and I use equity as a good example of when we think about equity work, like what are the questions that we ask in terms of, does this thing promote equity? Does this thing that we're doing give access in ways that promote equity and the principles of equity? Similarly, I think about wellness that way. Not to say that those things are siloed, because I think there is a lot of overlap between the work of equity and in being well as a community, as an individual. So, and I know Shawana, who is here today, and I'm going to introduce the rest of our team here today. We'll touch on that as well. So with that, I wanted to do quick introductions. I'm Megan Schaefer, Assistant to the Superintendent for District Administration. With me, I have Dr. Lauren Walker, who's our lead supervisor of clinical services here in the district. Shawana James Coles, our director of, I said Coles, right? Yeah. Yes. Our director of DEI B, and Mo Hussein, who's our director of nutritional services. And this team, which is not our full team, has evolved, whether it be just by our common interests in this topic, but also because of our positions give us the ability to think systems level and bring people together to advance this work. So while there are people on the team that aren't here and our larger committee members, we hope to do a good job of representing their perspectives as well. So with that, okay, technical issue number 2, we're not advancing here. Okay. So with the agenda today, in terms of what our presentation is, what we'll cover is a little bit of a historical perspective that I thought was kind of interesting, and in terms of helping in terms of helping to frame where we are today. A little overview of the ongoing work of the district, because I know we talked about some of the framing of this was around the wellness policy, but I think it's important to say, like, there's been a long journey of health initiatives and wellness initiatives that led us to the point of being able in position to create a wellness policy or an updated wellness policy. So I think it's important to honor that work, talk about what's happened since we've come together as a committee and some next steps, and invite you, at any point to ask questions, but also share your feedback, share your ideas in terms of how we move forward together. So I'll tell you, one of the things that I spend a little bit of time thinking about is what from a historical perspective, when we talk about school health and wellness, like what are ways in which this notion that schools are responsible for health and wellness, how did that sort of evolve over time? Because I think it's important. It even struck me as being more important once I started to dig more into it, of like, okay, here's how we came to this point. And it's not like we recently invented wellness in school. Like, we talk about it some ways differently than we have historically, but it has been, sort of part of what's been expected of schools for a long time. And sometimes, and initially that was sort of out of necessity. Like, we used schools as resources for providing health services in times where the rise of vaccines and where there are captive audiences to do things like make sure that we are creating safe spaces, not just for our schools, but for entire communities. And then you see this is the site is there. I do encourage, it's a nice, interesting read if you want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into school health, which was, we're talking about health, but it is like what we consider like physical health as a function of wellness. The expansion of school nurses, physical education is starting, it emerges as a component of what a school should provide to students in the early 1900s. There was really, into the 1960s where I think that's where the reason I put that as a benchmark in this brief timeline is that's where I think we started to expand what wellness meant in terms of not just the physical dimension, but also the social emotional dimension of wellness. So we see, that expansion in the 1960s. And I'll put a footnote, not to be political, but a lot of the work around what school health should look like is not connected to funding. And where there is connections to funding, it's largely to support specialized populations or based on socioeconomic status, as opposed to a universal idea of funding systems and programs to support wellness for all students. So I think that's where you start to see tension in, like, how far do schools need to go to support wellness for all students as opposed to specialized, groups. And I realize I'm waving my hand around a lot, and fortunately the camera's over there. So I also, in terms of this particular text, and I realize there's, many texts out there about this development, but I thought what was interesting was this question that cycles through the history of, like, how much is too much? Like, where does the role of the school end, and where does the role of the community begin? And how do they work together to build more effective systems, as opposed to it being what the school's responsibility versus the community's responsibility. So I thought that was and I leave that as a question for all of us to, continue to work through, because at the end of the day, I think the most effective systems are going to be ones that complement, both what schools can do and what outside resources can do and what families can do to support students. So that's basically the sum and substance of this long quote, which is also just not just the how do we bring communities together to support, but the recognition that the complexity of this work has increased, or maybe it hasn't increased necessarily, but our perspective has changed over time, and where historically the purpose of school health initiatives was to solve disease or cure disease or provide vision screenings for students, to issue eyeglasses, things like that, versus now where the need is a little less definitive and a little more amorphous, and the needs become a little more individualized too, I think. So I think that's, for me, helped me to think about why are we where we are, and the complexity of solving wellness in a school setting without considering all of the other factors and dimensions that we want to address ideally, which when it makes it daunting, but also I think it's an important conversation that we need to continue to work through. This is an infographic that I found as well that kind of just tracks like this idea, this evolution of school wellness. Again, more focused on like physical health and nutrition, as opposed to other dimensions that were much more current in our minds and when we think about wellness. So I'm going to turn. So again, I recommend the read. It's pretty interesting. But I want to turn to sort of like, with that as the backdrop, what are the ways in which Lower Merion has, exhibits this ongoing commitment to wellness that tracks sort of what that historical perspective looks like. So things such as health services, nutritional services, school counseling, which have been part of our work for a long period of time, are connected to wellness. And I don't want to lose sight of the work that exists that's really intended to address the wellness needs of students. And this is just information that I have taken from our website. So this is all publicly available for people that aren't familiar. I know many of you are. Our website does have resources for families on different topics. Again, under the health services, nutritional service, school counseling. We also have clinical services. We have crisis response teams. And you can see here where there's layered in like this ongoing effort to do the things that we do well in recognition of this expanded definition of wellness. So digital citizenship, I think we talk about as a component of wellness. Knowing how to navigate that safely is a component of wellness. Our equity efforts are a component of wellness as we view that.
Like all that, so we can see your full screen.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, on the top line.
This one? Yeah.
Minimize it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you want to go back? That,
Yeah, can we start the whole thing again?
if you want me to, I just, yeah. There. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. It was a lot of words anyway. You'll
You
have
can also
the,
turn off the X, not hearing anything, turn on volume if you want. Yeah, look at that.
Okay.
Nice.
thank you. It takes a village, and like I said, I'll make these slides available to you as well. So whatever you missed, you can go back and read. So again, these are things that are these cut and paste from our website. These are all available. More information is available to you on our website around this commitment to wellness, and again, our efforts continue to be communicating more effectively what those opportunities are for students and families, and enhancing what they are in terms of content and delivery. Okay, so now I did something that, no, I thought I moved that. Now nothing works again. Also, again, with that historical context, this language that we use to frame what is an elementary school experience. I mean, this is just a snippet of what it is, but some of the words there that you'll see from a developmentally appropriate lens is, an elementary school experience is building social skills, emphasis of providing foundational skills, encouraging curiosity and exploration. So like I think there's important ways that we can talk about that work connects directly to wellness when done well. Middle school, the focus on, social, emotional, and as well as academic growth are our ways in which we've framed our programs for a long time, similarly at the high school level. And I think that's what we have to also notice is that there's a evolution to what wellness looks like across the K-12 spectrum. So elementary is a little more like, nurturing and protective, whereas high school, one of the things that you notice right away is that idea of agency and selection and voice and opportunity. So, how a child grows from an elementary setting to a high school setting is ideally doing those things to transition into adulthood. And that's not to say that there aren't, strategies we continue to put in place so that everyone, every child has the opportunity to navigate that successfully. And that does look different for different students. But the idea is what you see there is not just like a focus on core academic content, but a longstanding effort to address the social emotional needs of students connected to wellness, and also the really critical pieces of giving places for students to engage and feel connected to schools, to peers, and to their adults through activities. And I know Shwana is going to talk about that as well as a feature of like, how do we encourage wellness through all of these multidimensional activities that we offer across our especially our secondary schools. And more, I'm sort of bringing us up to more recent times, our ongoing commitment to making our practices more public. And I think when I talk about, the health of an organization, the health of a system, the health of a community, is that there's common understandings of what that system looks like and what is it designed to serve or deliver. Because if we're all expecting different things out of a system that's not built to deliver all of those different things, it creates frustration. It creates, anger, resentment. And so I think we all have to, our commitment should be minimally as an ongoing commitment to saying, here are the things that we do deliver. And if we're not delivering them at the level that you need for your child, we need to know that. And then areas where it might not be enough like that, or there's gaps, that's what we need to continue to mine. At the same time, we have to sustain a core program to the best of our ability that meets the needs of all students. In particular, meets the needs that are foundational in terms of like safety, security, wellness, nutrition, health. So those basic services that, like if we talk about that historical perspective, that have always been provided. So we need to make sure we sustain those minimums, I would argue, and add the enhancements that benefit everyone in the system. So the idea of like, let's make those more plain and clear to our community. Dr. Yanni's talked a lot about making those practices public in ways that are better serve our community. The commitment again in terms of other movement is our start time initiative to change start times to allow for better sleep for our students. Comes out of the idea that that's very much connected to health and wellness, and will yield like dividends in terms of performance and outcomes for students. We continue to support wellness days at our schools as other examples of more recent things that we've added to the mix. And the little Hanover research, surveying students, making sure that we're gathering data that's relevant to their experience. The recent belonging survey, et cetera, is critical. So it's not just, adults and teachers and all of us sitting around and saying, this is what the student experience is really making sure that we're listening to students about their experience directly, whether that's through surveys, focus groups. We have councils at our secondary schools. With Dr. Yanni has a student council. He meets with students regularly. So that idea of gathering student voices as much as possible is important as well. And then again, I'm recognizing the key partnerships in this work. It's not a school alone doing this work. And these are just some examples, but I think this is a real opportunity for us to continue to, build in community partnerships in supporting the wellness work of our students. Because at the end of the day, it's not just our students that need this support. It's staff, it's families. It goes well beyond like what we can control during a school day can very much be, and I don't want to, can very much, the experience at home can very much be the opposite of what's happening in school. And that doesn't mean it's, there's no, wrong or bad or otherwise. It's just, how do we make sure that if there are families that need support, that we're making sure that we're making all of those connections. Again, I go back to the funding. We are very fortunate as a school district to have as many social workers as we do to really dig into this work. But I would argue like that's not enough. And that's where the funding is a critical piece of how do we continue to expand this work, is like having the personnel that are positioned to do this to the best, to the highest level possible. And I think one of the benefits, the many benefits of Lower Merion School District is we should feel very proud to set the bar in a lot of ways, but we should also feel like there's that burden of like, we should be setting a bar for someone needs to set the bar and show how great public schools can be. And why we're a leader in that, as a school district, and continue. I always say like, Lower Merion's about continuous improvement. If that's not where you are as a person, like this might not be a good place for you, but that is what we do. And I think that's where a lot of us gather our energy, is saying like, how do we continue to be, push the bar and serve students at the highest level. And I think partnerships is another way that we do that.
It's our parent education series.
Yes.
You could add that on.
Yep.
It's not
Yep.
big.
Exactly.
What's going on at home. Parent piece.
Yes. And I think I grabbed hot topics and I didn't grab that. So there are some really great examples of that, that this group does for sure. And I should say, Erasing the Finish Line is such a great example of, I think, an opportunity to bring community together. I've enjoyed the book study. I think it's also, again, an idea of like, how do we come together and have better common understandings about how we all can support student wellness? Because to me, that book is a lot about how do we navigate, especially at the secondary level, wellness, and that it's a commitment of all of us to do this work better. So moving into more of the committee work, we've had a longstanding wellness committee in the district, or wellness council, that was largely a compliance measure. It started as a compliance measure. It's a very robust group. It's been great in terms of like a nutrition, physical health lens, which our wellness policy prior to last year was largely about a compliance piece. Like these are the physical education requirements. These are the nutrition requirements that as a school district we're required to abide by. And it didn't really reflect, again, like our ongoing work as a school district to think of wellness as a very holistic term. So we post-COVID, which by the way was a whole wellness initiative in of itself, right? Keeping kids safe. So we got through that, which we started to bring back and take a closer look at those things that really had to be put on pause for a while as we focused our efforts on COVID. So the committee was brought back and expanded so that we could, among other things, take a look at that policy. We knew we wanted to make it reflect and be more aligned with our practices. And so that was, I would say, a highlight of the work that the Wellness Committee did in the first year back. We also worked on the personal devices at schools. An outcome of that was the Off and Away campaign, which anecdotally, and I'm not saying it was perfect, but I think we've seen an improvement in terms of in-school behavior around devices, definitely an awareness, definitely staff feeling more supported that they can, direct students as it relates to devices in the school setting, which has resulted in less tension in the school environment too. So we are going to seek, and I'll say, I'll return to this at the end, some input directly from students about their experience this year. So that's something we're going to be working on. And then at the end of last year, we said, how do we think about the committee moving into this year? And how does that work? Again, looking at it from a systems perspective, enhance the work that we are already doing or we are about to undertake. So again, we looked at this wellness policy, reframed it. Sorry, I should have been talking as I was showing you this slide around policy. We brought the committee back together and said, these are, and the ones that are highlighted reflect the noticings of work that for this year, for us was really, focus areas. And we looked at the committee in a way to, how do we break into some subcommittees that can help advise and amplify this work in ways that create another sort of dimension? I'll give an example of the start times. We knew that we were moving towards changing start time in the following year. We know, however, I think it would be short-sighted of us to think like just changing that alarm clock was going to make all of the difference. So one of the important discussion points of the subcommittee is like, what are the other ways that we can help families understand and connect to habits at home that can enhance sleep time? So are there some ways that we, how do we communicate that importance, that it's not just you get to sleep in later, therefore you get to stay up later? Like, are there other ways that we can promote healthier habits at home? So that was one of the things that made sense for a subcommittee to sort of take a deeper dive into, because it was a cross-section of students and families and staff members. So that was the design. And we picked some key issues that needed, I think, that lens of ongoing support from a community or student perspective. And so each one of the teams here is going to do a little bit of a share out of the work to date in those subcommittees. So I can stop talking and you can stop listening to me drone on. So if, I don't know if it's easiest to shift people up this way to talk. You're up.
Probably.
Okay. And Mo, you're up first, if you
Okay.
don't.
I don't know, people are talking here, I don't have to.
I think you need to, I think we need to switch.
Oh.
places.
And you'll be on Megan's microphone and
So you
this,
get the hot seat
this
first.
video.
Oh, boy, I'm Megan's seat. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is Mo. I'm the Director of Nutritional Services. I always think that I started wellness before everyone else. It's not true, but I think nutrition is wellness. That's what I think. What you eat affects your mental health, physical health, and your overall wellness. So I'm lucky to have or to be in a group of wonderful parents at Nutrition Committee. I think Robin is here somewhere. I don't know if she is. Okay. So a part of the Nutrition Committee is we do some testing and sampling and introducing new items to our kids through nutrition education. And oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm excited about this. So first of all, how many of you know that breakfast is free? You don't know breakfast is free? Okay, well, that's more than I thought. So,
But only if you grab a fruit.
I love this. Okay, you know it well. You know it well.
hear it all the time. I want cinnamon toast crunch, but I can't have it unless I grab it.
Okay, which school is this? Because I'll give the manager a raise. Gladwin, okay. Amazing job, yes. It's been extended.
No, but I mean, it's last year.
No, it's been in the school code now. It was just introduced, so it will be free again next year.
The free
Breakfast, yes, stays. Yeah, it's since last year and staying, so that's exciting. I think it's important part of our nutrition and wellness. You cannot teach a hungry kid. So this is a project I'm excited about. It came from students, 7th grade leadership class. They were concerned about kids who are coming late to school and they don't have time to have breakfast. So from the students, to the teacher, to the principal, to us, and we all get together and we have this wonderful breakfast card. And are you at BlackRock? I can see.
Heard about it.
Okay, you heard about it? Okay, I hope it's good things.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really excited about this. And this is just a great example of everybody coming together, starting from our students really first, and then the teacher and the principal. And it's a great example. We're gonna expand to Balakenwood next.
They put it so they can just grab it. It's like somebody walks around with it. Usually, so they usually
Yeah.
cafeteria. This is like in a place where they closer to the gym.
Put up the gym and the entrance.
By the
So
entrance,
the
they can get it.
car drop-off location.
Mo, can I ask a quick question?
Mhm.
What was the timeline from when the students kind of took this on to when it was implemented?
Took us 4 or 5 weeks, I think.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's longer than what I liked, but again, there's a lot of pieces involved. And the
45
teachers were
days.
very busy too, so we're like, okay.
Well, that,
Yeah.
sorry, can I jump in?
Please
I asked,
do.
you were talking about that the other day, I was like, I think that's a great example of like where our work continues to evolve and not just like committee driven, it's like department driven and listening to students, and I thought that, I was glad that, thank you for adding that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a good example.
I love it when students come up with great idea, and actually we talk, I don't know where the A came from here, must came from me somewhere, sorry. But yes, it's a great example. We love to hear our students and our teachers and our principal are very supportive. It's ongoing and we're going to expand. And breakfast will be free again, so spread the word for everyone. This is an example of collaboration with parents committee. So our parents came to school, we produced the food and they offered samples of 2 different kinds of hummus. We learned through this that as you see in the survey, many kids never even tried hummus before. And many parents learned that you can have hummus that's sesame free, because a lot of them were scared about sesame. So it's a great way to introduce healthier options for our kids, introduce a healthy snack. And again, I think it starts with nutrition. Maybe I'm biased toward my job, but I think it all starts with what you eat. Any questions or just move for the next? I don't know. I'm sitting in your seat and think I can make the calls now.
Why don't we go through, there's not, I mean, we'll go through the subcommittee and then circle back to questions if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'm fall risk. But I may need you for the video. So hello, everyone. I'm Shawana James Coles. I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, which I've added to my title. And it's funny when you're saying that and you're writing Shawana James Coles, Director, it's like such a long thing. But I wanted to just thank Mo for what he's doing, because when we have foods and things, one, he mentioned about if you come to school hungry, then you can't learn, right? Because you're focused on your empty bellies. And so I'm so grateful for the work that he's doing in his committee. I shared with him and Megan yesterday that I never liked guacamole because not that I had tried it, but I never liked the way it looked. And I'm a texture person and I didn't like the texture. And then being at a restaurant with some of my neighbors, they ordered some guacamole and they're like, you just need to try it. And now I have to say, for the past 2 years, I've loved guacamole. And my husband now makes it, but it's just, that's just an example of the work that sometimes, textures and foods that we're not exposing our children to because we don't like it. And I don't think my kids have never eaten it because I hadn't eaten it. So I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing. And when you see these foods it also works with the idea of belonging. So I always tell everyone that Renee Brown is my best friend in my mind. And so I just wanted to share. Can we share her? I just wanted to share, she really talks about this idea of belonging versus fitting in better than I could ever say it. It's like 30 seconds. So hopefully it works because it kind of grounds the work that we're doing with belonging. And Megan, let me see, did it work? Okay, let me see, no. Is this it right here?
37 seconds.
Yeah, let's hit that one and just see. Let's go for it.
It's like, is everyone gonna be able to hear it?
Oh.
I think the volume is down on my computer. And the volume is.
Oh, okay.
And as a staff, group of people.
Oh, shoot. Well, we'll start that over.
We'll just go back. Sorry for the technical.
That's okay.
Wait, I'm moving the mouse and we had it.
Yeah.
That's the right bar.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a mouse issue.
Yeah, I just want to.
It's this idea of making sure that our students, our staff, our community has that sense of belonging, and that they don't have to change who they are, but they can show up with authenticity, which is a message that we've been sharing. And as we've been having conversations and going around to talk to students, we're very fortunate on our team, and Jill's here, is that we have 2 students who are on our committee, and they have been wonderful, and they've shared, and we talk about how we want to highlight student voice and hear what our students say, and they've been very active participants. We don't get to live the lives they live every day in school, so having them come to our meetings and share out has been very helpful and helping to guide some of the work that we've been trying to do. I don't know which slide I'm on.
Yeah,
I'm not
let
on
me,
a slide. Okay.
I'm gonna go back.
So I'm
to
just gonna keep
meeting.
talking, and then we can, one thing that this idea of also making sure that we are involved in our community. So we've had some community people that's on the wellness committee, and when students feel good and they feel like they are a part of the school environment, that's that sense of belonging, and that's the tie into wellness. One of the activities that our students shared is, Megan kind of mentioned in the beginning about the student activities, that we have a lot of activities in some of our buildings. 2 of our students that's on our committee, one shared how her sense of belonging came from being a part of the theater group. When she came to the school, she didn't really have a lot of friends, but the theater group has now become her family. And so that's the importance of making sure that we have activities and things available for our students. So in listening to them, I wanted to just highlight them, because every meeting that I attend is like, what do the students say? What do the students say? What do they need? And so the students really share also that in the beginning of the year, especially at our 2 high schools, we have the activities fair, where, the gym is filled with all the different clubs and things you can join. But what happens when you don't you don't start in September, right? Maybe you start in October, you start in November, you start in December, for whatever the reason, your life has changed and you've now become a part of this wonderful school environment, this district. And so we've been talking to them about what can we do. And they really love this idea of having extended, maybe not the large scale of having the big community, I want to say job fairs, activities fair in September, but making sure that there's some offerings and students know how to join them throughout the school year, depending on when you're transferring in. So we may assign them buddies, but then also saying these are the clubs that are available, being really intentional about that, and working with our students has really been something that the students have really talked about. I had this slide up that said, and you may have seen it before, stop telling students that they belong. It came from Education Week, and the idea of this is we can't just say you belong here, you're a part of us, you're part of this. We have to show that. We have to demonstrate that. We have to make sure that in everything that we do, we're being intentional about this idea of belonging. Having banners and having signs. And I'll tell you, when I first saw this, I was like, oh my God, what do you mean we can't tell students they belong? No, we can't. We have to show them that they are part of our school community. And so how do we do that? We start by asking their stories, asking about their journeys. How did talking about their families? Where did you come from? Making those connections are going to be those things that's going to help us, especially when we're speaking of some of our English language learners, talking about their journeys. All those things we have now, the Pocket Talk devices, all these things help with wellness. Is it coming up? Okay, everyone's looking up, so I was like, it's up there. And then still having those high expectations. Lower Merion is a high performing district. So we want to make sure that we still remain high performing, but we're also trying to do those things that's going to meet the needs of all learners that are in our district. Talking about setting the bar high, so that we can make sure that, again, they have that, all students have that sense of belonging, right? And then as also was identifying and cultivating the work. Talking about safe spaces. I have been doing some research on this, and we may not have a completely safe environment, right? But we can do everything in our power. These are the things that are within our control to create safe-ish spaces. So all the things so that we can make sure that we're doing our part so that we can continue to grow our students, their psychological safety, where when they talk about the dominant culture, there are certain people that are, that have a different level of privilege than others. And so how do we all come to the table? How do we have these conversations? How do we engage? How are we developing norms? How are we gathering feedback? I mean, I'm just really fortunate that I get to talk to so many groups about their experiences here in Lower Merion, so many parent groups about their experiences. How are we building a community? Our last month equity and anti-racism committee meeting, I talked about this idea of a beloved community. It's one of those things that I really love about Lower Merion is that sense of community. Why did you move here? Why are you here? Why are you raising your family here? What are the supports that we need to make sure that we're continuing to do that? How are we building support groups for the families that are here? How are we communicating? Megan shared about Dr. Yanni's, his, what is it called? Pathways to Making practices public, right? So that idea that, you know, I've heard that since I came here, and you'll have all these things, so you don't have to write them all down. But you've heard, I've heard since I've been here, how are we communicating things? And so making sure that we're putting out all of the information that we have readily available so that parents know what we're trying to do here. How are we checking in? And I love this part, whose voices are missing, right? Because we do send out surveys, but when we look at the surveys, are we capturing every group? Whose voices are missing, and what do we need to do? Do we need to go out into the community? Do we need to go to other communities? Again, that's all a part of a district and systemic wellness. And this is just the activities fair, some images from the activities fair that I had discussed earlier when we couldn't see them. And this is at some of the, I think this is at LM, their activities fair, but we have many, there are lots of clubs and lots of activities, but we want to make sure that as we're continuing to grow and we're listening to the students, and I think it's just such a fabulous idea of how do we expand this work. Jill, did I cover everything? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, I think there is the one thing we talked
We'll talk-
about last time, was the belonging, the buddy system.
Yeah. We can circle back to that at the end.
All right, back in the hot seat. I don't know, I'm gonna look over at Lauren if she wants to jump in. These last two, I think, are most connected to initiatives that we have seen, like sort of as a school district we move forward with and look to our committees to, again, support and enhance. This one in particular, for me, having two teenagers in my own household feels very personal and something that, you know, I'd love for us, you know, how do we, in our committee, subcommittee work, we've talked about the impact of the change in our school environment, but also ways that we can continue to message the importance of all of us taking a break and figuring out how to have a healthy relationship with our devices, like not just our students, but as families. We know, I mean, I'm guilty of it, just as, you know, I assume others may be, and know that being really intentional about that time on devices is important, because it's not that they're going to go away, but the balance that we model is critical for our kids too. So ways that we can continue to amplify that, like work in awareness of the issues. And largely, I think that erasing the finish line is also the fear I think we all have as parents of like what we don't know. And it feels so overwhelming sometimes to get a handle on this new, the way in which our children engage with their peers and with the world is so different in many ways that it, like I said, it feels overwhelming. But I think that's the even more reason why, as a community, to come together and have those healthy discussions and ways in which we strategize together, so we don't all feel so alone in navigating it, in ways that are healthy and supported by what's happening in schools and what's happening in our larger community. So there's a lot that we want to continue to do, but know that, you know, we've talked about, do we take a next step in terms of this off and away and make it even more like dramatic, and that, you know, kids don't have access for a full day. And I know there was a lot of tension there, but, you know, we wonder how important that is for our kids to really be off and away. And And we suspect that, like in other districts, surveying kids about the impact of protocols like this is that they feel better, because they don't have that pressure, because everyone has time away that's consistent from their device. So there's not that anxiousness, as much anxiousness about what's happening when I can't grab my device because no one else is doing it at that time, or at least they're not supposed to be. We know that it's not a perfect system, but you know, those healthier outcomes in our school environment are important. And this can, and the sleep practices piece, which I touched on earlier, in terms of what those goals were. We would like, and our intent from a district perspective is to, again, survey students before the end of this year to capture some data both on the device usage and also current like sleep patterns and practices, so that a year from now we can also look at that again to see if, and hopefully we've moved the needle in a way. And if not, like what is that continuous awareness building that we need to do, and other strategies we may need to put in place. Lauren, did you want to talk about either one of those or anything? Okay, yeah, whatever you wanted. Why don't you get some camera time so people see?
No, this isn't like a lot. I know this has been like, so, you know, this has obviously been on our radar for a little bit as we're looking at the healthy start times and the healthy sleep practices. And as we know, we've heard this research, you know, for a while now, that most adolescents don't get enough sleep. So we know that upwards of 50% get less than 7 hours when the recommendation is 8 to 10. And that can impact a lot of different factors, like, you know, your mood, emotional regulation, all academic performance, and all of those things. As Megan said, it's sort of like a bigger piece. So we switched the start times, but we still have to help students facilitate those healthy habits. And that ties in with technology, and that ties in with other demands of their life. And so making sure our students don't just then go to bed an hour later because they can sleep in an hour more. So what we have been working on in our subcommittee is really trying to look at other practices for sleep hygiene, like what's the environment? Again, what are we doing with technology to get that off and away so we can settle into bed? We know screen time impacts students' ability to fall asleep. And just sort of environmental things. What can they do to really set up a routine? I know a lot of our students also are inconsistent. They might have an activity, they go to bed later one night, earlier the next. So really working on ways we can get information out to our students beyond the start time about, you know, developing those habits so they can really, you know, facilitate the best maximum sleep, which is going to make them feel better, perform better, and just really be able to show up like each day to school.
And also, I think figuring out where does that message get heard? Like, how do students, so broadly speaking, not just for this, you know, particular subject, but like, who do kids listen to, and how do we get the word through the either trusted adults? Like maybe it's a coach. I think the impact on a coach saying like sleep is critical. If you don't get good sleep, we know that that's going to impact your performance, is going to be a lot more, have a lot bigger impact likely on a student than maybe the health teacher that delivers the same exact message, unfortunately. But I think that's like our work is, you know, as people that work directly with kids all the time, like how do we translate that information, and who is best positioned to deliver it so it gets heard, is you know, what we as an educational, you know, institution is like, that's our work. So where do we go from here? And to wrap up, because I know we want to leave a little bit of time for questions, again, is that continuing effort to create like clear systems around wellness, so that it's clear to everyone in the system where to go, what to expect, and and you know, when there's a need, how does it get met, or who can they go to get it met? That communication piece is critical. That idea of having universal prompts the way we do with equity, so that every time we are, you know, making a new policy or revising policy, are we able to, you know, look at it through a similar lens of impact on wellness, And then again, that survey piece and our wellness committee work continues as well. So it could go way in, again, into the weeds, but realizing that was a really, honestly, it may have been tedious for you all, but I feel like that hopefully was a good update overview for where we are with wellness, and invite you to not only ask questions today, but continue to ask us questions and work together with us to build those partnerships that are in service of our, students' health and wellness. Thank you.
And I do apologize for my, now it's gonna, I'm gonna put separate on, right there, my thing didn't work.
Oh, please,
Oh.
let that go. Let
So
that go.
please forgive me.
That's not.
Right. That's right. You gotta let it go. Let it go.
Are there questions? Shelby, let me just bring the computer next to you so that people can hear your question. And for those of you on Zoom, if you have a question, please just raise your hand, and I'm going to try to balance both, being in person and dealing with Zoom.
I have a few written down, but I'll just, some other people might have the same question. So I liked it that you said you include student voices, and there were 2 students on your committee.
Mhm.
I was wondering, how do you pick them?
I'm
Who
gonna
do they
direct that
represent?
to Ms. Schaefer.
How
How do we get those?
The initial selection of students was through principals. So we didn't have necessarily, I think, the volunteer, but we, as we do with other committees, we've asked principals to recommend students for this one. That can change
Is there one
with
from
the-
LM and one from
Yeah,
Harriman?
Do they-
the LM and.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, so the high school
both
students.
Yeah, both high school.
And boy, girl, and how are we represent, you know what I mean? There's a lot of
For sure,
different student voices.
for sure.
So I feel
Right.
like 2 is kind of.
Well, yes, and I would, so those of you that know, I would open it up, whoever wants to come and talk, I welcome that. And so there's always this balance, and that's why I think the idea of the systems approach, the committee isn't the end all be all in terms of what wellness looks like and how we respond to student voice, which is why we layer in the surveys and I mentioned some other places where student voice, there's a lot of places where student voice gets heard, but we can certainly talk about the expansion of students on the committee. I welcome that, but it is a matter of how much can you balance with
Or if
that.
there's a way for those students to have information sessions or discussions in the school, and then they are somehow assimilating all that information and representing the students rather than their own personal experiences might be a different.
May I speak to that? So in the beginning of the year, we met in this room, and there was a group of, I guess, people who had been a part of the wellness committee. And with a committee, you can't have a whole lot of people. So to their credit, there were multiple committees, so there was papers and we got feedback from everyone. And those 2 students thought that belonging was an area that they could lend their voice, right? So there were other committees that could have been a part of nutrition or healthy start times, but both of them selected belonging. I will say that when they're speaking, when I spoke of one student's experience, that was just me sharing that student's experience, but they do go out and talk to other people in their group and in their buildings, and I know that they have conversations with their administrators. And so I don't want to discredit what they bring to the table. I'm just excited that they chose this group. And then we do have the belonging survey, which that has gone out to all students in grades 5 through 12. I know that Dr. Yanni is going to do a presentation on that
I was
coming
wondering
up.
about that.
Yeah, so that's coming up. But so there's other ways, as Megan said, of sharing student voice, but I think there was this invitation, and then.
Right,
Yeah.
I guess to Michelle's point though, one of your questions is who are we not hearing from?
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes the kids that are suffering with the belonging the most, or suffering with mental health the most, or suffering,
Absolutely.
we don't get access to,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the best way is, but if they're, I don't know.
Yeah, I just
something to
didn't want
think about.
I didn't want someone to watch this and think that
No, we don't
their
share the
voices.
questions,
Yeah.
actually. The questions will not be
It's
recorded.
anymore.
I can actually stop the recording, but we edit it.
Okay, good. I just.
I'm gonna
wanted to
stop
make
the
sure that
recording
I honored
formally.
They're not setting you up. I was
Oops.
just curious.
No, I appreciate you. No, I wanted to honor their
It
work.
seemed like a small, just